Hello, and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, certified professional coach and owner of Vitality Career Coaching. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Montreece Hardy. She is a phenomenal individual who I met through the American Foundation for the Blind Leaders Development Program. And she and I have a shared commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and we certainly bonded over that. And she's just a phenomenal person, and I would like to introduce the audience to Montreece Hardy. Welcome.
Thank you, Ken. Hi, everyone.
I'm hoping you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself, maybe how disability affects you on a day-to-day basis. Whatever you want to say about your disability is up to you, but just how it affects you and how it sort of interferes on your day-to-day life.
Sure. Okay. First, I just want to say that it is a tremendous honor. Thank you so much for even having me here and having this conversation. As far as disability, I am classified as legally blind, and my visual impairment, the way that I typically describe it is that I normally say it as 5% of my vision in my left eye. That's a very rough way to try to describe it. It's a roughly 5% of my visual field that I have with no peripheral vision. It is central. And that's my left eye. My right eye is has no light perception at all. And so,
Twinsies.
right, basically. And so, what is it? So yeah, that's pretty much it. And as far as like how does it interrupt my life? Oh man, I have had to really learn to do life differently in terms of one of the biggest challenges for me. It's interrupted my parenting. That's a whole other beast of a conversation. In terms of like washing dishes, for example, dishwashing is different for me because I have to be a lot more careful and feel a lot around. I'm one of those people who, despite having a dishwasher, I still wash dishes by hand.
Mm-hmm. You too, huh?
And so I still feel around after scrubbing the dish with all the elbow grease. I still also feel around and make sure that I got everything off as best I possibly can. So that's just one way that it's interrupted, like my daily. In terms of my parenting, getting back to that, my kids are getting to the age where this is where I would normally be the parent taxi, but because I cannot drive, I literally have to order them Ubers
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and order myself Ubers to get them everywhere. And the expense of that is insane. So that is how it has changed that part of my parenting and life. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was having a conversation just the other day with somebody about Ubers, and it's I could talk all day long about them. They're great, but at the same time, unless it's your lived experience where you have to where you can't drive, it's a whole other world out there. I tell people that all the time, and
Yes.
and just the planning that goes in that you have to
So
have, and it's just
planning.
me. It's just me for myself. I can't imagine it with children. I
Oh
can't
my
even
goodness.
imagine because I know how difficult it is just for me, and I have a partner, right? So it's like, you
Yes.
know, grocery shopping,
Yes.
all of the basic stuff is that much more difficult, right?
Yes.
And it takes time and it's
Time.
just exhausting and I don't think I'll ever get be completely adjusted to it. So how about with children and all of that uh, logistics? How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? What sort of system do you have just so it is manageable?
So I think that I am a faith-based person. So every once in a while you may hear me throw God in there because it's part of who I am. And I think with me going through this, God created me to be a person who loves the systems. like I'm a person who I absolutely love all things about planning, especially logistical planning, operations, all of that. And because of that really strong trait on my part, I am inclined to think like really, really try to think ahead. Here is an example. When I'm preparing for back to school with my kids, me and my sister, we went to the school ahead of time. And so for me, I'm walking and I'm thinking, okay, this has a lot of cracks. How many steps is this? Just in case, in the worst case scenario, what does it look like for me to come up here for the kids?
Mm-hmm.
Having my sister talk to me out loud about what do you see in this space? And all of those things. And then I have to be able to describe, make this left here, don't make this right here. And you'll see this on the corner and all of that. You know why? Because I have 15 people on my pickup list. Like, I have the most insane pickup list for my kids. Most people tend to have, and what I'm talking about is when your kids are, especially in elementary, maybe even middle school, you have a list of who's going to ever pick up and drop off the kids from school,
Yeah.
right? So that, the school knows, they know how to identify and all of that. Those people get different tags, or at least they have their names and they can look at their licenses and so on. Yeah, there's like 3 spaces there. And mine is always overflowing because I have to have a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan in case someone can't make it.
Yeah.
And now, thanks to the wonders of technology, there is this service, and I don't mean to like be a commercial for anybody, but people need to know about this, blind or not. There's this service called Hop Skip Drive. There are other services that are very similar. It is something like Uber for kids, but it is basically with daycare, like well researched, very well background checked. We're talking FBI level background checked nannies that are hired. They have a whole uniform, everything, and they are hired very specifically for transporting children.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super cool, especially because you can write it off at the end of the year. So
yeah,
it's super neat. But when I order a Hop Skip Drive driver to pick up not one, but 2 of my kids from 2 different schools, I have to be able to give them very clear directions. Otherwise, they will be in car pickup lines, which are murderous. They are the worst. Parents are consistently complaining about car pickup lines because they're the worst. And so I have to make sure that anybody who I ever send to pick up my kids, they have a very clear idea of what to look for. And this will give you an indication that you've gone too far, all of those things. Especially, it's insane because I haven't necessarily 100% seen it myself. It's only been described to me. Does that kind of paint that picture?
Absolutely. Because you have to give instructions to people, and it's like, where I live, drivers always get lost because I always give them directions, but they don't follow them. And so I can only imagine that there's a certain amount of, stress that comes with that. And not only is the stress factor, but the extra time that it takes to do the planning and all the other stuff, there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost, not just in terms of, the stress and it's exhausting, but missed opportunities as well, because there's only so many hours in a day. So other things, have to, lose out, like self-care is a huge thing. I know our hobbies and relationships suffer because we only have so much time. And what's your experience been like with all of that? Because I know for me, it's certainly it get down on you sometimes.
Yes, that's a good question. For me personally, please forgive the way that this is getting ready to sound, but I have almost given up on building any new friendships and relationships and just meeting new people. And the only reason why is just because I have noticed, like, I have 2 jobs, I have 2 kids. I feel like everything is hitting me in doubles at this point. And in order for me to show up and be any level of anything remotely close to 100% for any of those things at any given point, I really have to have clarity of mind and being concerned about getting to know new people and all of the interesting rigmarole that comes with that. I literally don't have the wherewithal, the capacity. I don't have it. Like what we were just talking about with the logistics and the navigation. one other thing that takes is a tremendous amount of patience.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, people and people I have learned, I'm saying something that other people have said about me. I would never say this about me, but other people, their experience of me is that I am extraordinarily patient. What they don't understand is that the effort that I put into not screaming at people on a daily basis just for not reading my text message or my email, like it is such a tremendous effort that it takes for me to exude this what appears as patience. And all of that takes away from anything that I could put into building a relationship. I actually dared to try Bumble a few months back, and I gave it up because I realized that I did not have the capacity to pay attention to all of the new dating things and all of that, and still show up and be very present for everyone and everything else, including our AFB fellowship. I couldn't. I
Yeah,
was
I hear you. I hear because it's we all have we only have so much bandwidth. That's how I refer
yes,
to it. And
yes,
and everything takes from that bandwidth, right? And if
everything.
we're living with a disability, you have the same stuff everybody else in the world has to do. We have to eat, we have to do all the regular stuff. But when you have a disability, you have this added expenditure of bandwidth
Yes,
in terms of time.
right.
I've learned patience because I've had to. It's something that if you don't, you go crazy if you don't, because an Uber can cancel on you and then you have to wait another 15 minutes. And if you didn't
Yes,
plan for that to happen, so you either show up really late or really early.
right, right, right.
And then that's lost time. Sure, you can listen to an audiobook or, but it's not really productive time.
Right.
And that's an adjustment, especially if you're used to, running and operating your life in a certain way. And then you encounter disability and you're like, okay, well, now you have to shift to doing it this way.
Yes.
And that's its own monster to tackle. And I've had a lot of therapy. I'm very open about that. I believe in therapy. I think it has gotten me through life. um
100%.
and so I am a firm believer and advocate that everybody, not just if you have a disability, but everybody can benefit from it,
Everybody.
whether it's through your church or what. But somebody who's a professional that has the ability to be objective and is invested in the outcome. They just care and they want to help you get to a better place. We all have
Pretty
stuff we
much.
go through in life. We all have it.
Mhm.
And so what are some of your tools to deal with the exhaustion? Not, there's physical exhaustion associated with disability as well, but the mental, I think for me has personally been the most taxing. We've already touched on therapy, but what are other ways that you have of just sort of dealing with it all?
You know what? That is such an excellent question. You're doing such a great job. But yes, I love that question. So I'll try to limit it because I have found that I'm one of those people who I test and try things out over periods and see what works, and I research a lot and I do my own little trial runs with things, and so I've practiced a number of things. One of the first things, and I don't think people normally think of this in this light, but having very open. I don't know if you were on our last AFB thing. Was that last night? It was either last night or the night before. What is it with?
With the review? Yeah.
Yes, the review. So I'm going to kind of repeat myself there actually a little bit. The book Crucial Conversations was so huge for me, and I believe that it is imperative to have open communication with those who we surround ourselves with,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're sighted, regardless of our relationship with them. But if we have consistent interaction with them, um, it's very helpful to have open communication for the sake of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Are you catching my flow with that so far?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So one example of this, my sister is my favorite person in the entire world, hands down. Oh, even just a little bit more edge over my kids. Okay.
You've known her
and
longer.
and because of this, I know her very well, and we all live together. Well, my sister is one who tends to like to do things at a specific speed. I know that I am a good 36 paces behind that speed most times, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And she and I have had some really good conversations about what makes me comfortable. And the most beautiful thing about my wonderful sister is that she asks questions and she says things like, let me know if I'm moving too fast. Let me
Mm-hmm.
know if I am doing this too much or that too much. Am I asking you too much? Because I know that you want your certain amount of independence. You know, like she's consistently thinking about what my experience is.
Mm-hmm.
But when we first started transitioning into this, she had no clue really how to have those conversations with me. And she also stood by and watched as I gained more confidence so that I could bring things up and have these conversations with her. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So all
Absolutely.
of that helped with creating a space, a psychologically safe space for within our home and within my sibling relationship for us to have all of these different conversations about my mobility and so on, and what makes sense for me to go different places, do different things with her, all of that. So that gives me one of the biggest pieces of mind from day to day. Other things that I do include reading. I am a bibliophile to my heart, and it's primarily with Audible. However, I am something of a first grader when I read, so I like to read and have Audible at the
You
same
too, huh? I do the same thing. I like having a physical copy of my book. If it's something that
Yes.
I do the same thing.
Yes. Like I love how books smell. I love
Mhm.
the smell of new fresh pages. I still love the process of, even though when I have my, like when I'm really really paying attention to it, I notice when I go back and look at my highlights, they're all up and curved on the pages. And
I use sticky notes. I switched over to sticky notes if there's stuff I want to go back to. But the
yes.
physical copy of the book, because I do a lot of I do writing and I do a lot of referencing and stuff like that.
Yes.
Because I prepare educational materials and things like that, and I need to be able to go back and reference stuff and quote stuff and look at the actual pages and the words.
Yes.
And you can't do that
Yes.
with an audiobook. It's much more. I'd have to dictate it, and that's much more difficult. And
Right.
so it's more practical for a lot of the things I do to have them. But I agree. I don't think it's weird at all
Okay. Well,
to have
I
the
appreciate
both
that.
versions. I think it's normal to me.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, we're 20, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
And I do use tags as well. In fact, I think that there's something wrong. Like I have to go back to a book if I don't have it like totally. If I feel, and if not at least 20 tags in the book, I'm like, oh, what were you doing? And I may go back and read that book. So reading is a huge part of my self care. And then what's the other thing that I do? Oh, music. Music is huge for me. I have playlists for everything. I have meditative playlists, sleep playlists, work playlists, and a number of different types of work playlists.
Hmm.
And so those are my self care things. Yeah.
Yeah, I share, I think, all of them. That's for sure. But you said something I wholeheartedly agree with, and that's living authentically is the only way to live. But it's hard. It requires allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, which is difficult.
Right.
But then for somebody who's been disabled their whole life, it's a different lived experience,
It
and that's worth
is.
acknowledging. But when you encounter it you've lived, as an adult, there's an adjustment not just for the person who experiences disability, but for everybody in their life.
Everyone.
It's their
Yes.
first experience. They don't know what to do either, and I think that sometimes there can be an expectation, and I'm not saying that this is neither good or bad. It's just an awareness that because we're the ones experiencing disability, they should just know what to do for us, but they don't know. And so I think
No.
if we want help and we want to move through life with better ease, we have to communicate and we have to be authentic in our needs and our
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. That's up to us to establish that. And then, of course,
Right.
other people need to listen and pay attention and have that dialogue. But it's a give and take. It's not a one-way street, and I think that that's something that's not talked about enough. That
No, it's not.
yeah,
I
um,
wanted to add something to that, what you were saying. I don't mean
yeah.
to cut you off,
No,
but
no, no, no. Go, please go ahead.
it's so huge what you're saying. So there's a term in the DEI work that I do, specifically the disability inclusion work that I do. I've been learning more about the term ableism.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like it's a murky, I personally feel like it's a murky term.
Uh,
But
oh yeah, that we could have a whole
I
conversation
know,
about that term. Trust me on that one. I have a lot of feelings about ableism.
yeah, I do. But I as I've been learning about it, it's I've been learning what it looks like, and then also what it doesn't look like.
Mhm.
And I'm learning how to speak to it, and then I try to name these things and have these conversations openly with those who I love, those who are immediately around me all the time, my sister, but also my kids. Here's an example, because it happened tonight. My son and I were washing dishes. I was teaching him how also to use the dishwasher, but I'm also doing the hand washing
Uh-huh.
of the thing. And so there was I asked him, did we get everything off of the off the counter and out of the sink? And he used his words. He's 10 years old, and he used his words to direct my usable site in my hand to where there was a dish lingering in the corner in the sink.
Hmm.
And I said, sweetheart, that was amazing that you did that. I love that you did not just come over here and just grab it for me and just hand it to me or get impatient with me,
Yeah.
but you patiently did this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was like an anti-ableist moment, if you will. It was the opposite example, but it helped me understand that much more. Ableism is when you automatically make up in your mind. This is one piece of it anyway, what
Yeah.
I'm learning. You automatically make up in your mind that I'm not going to be able to do it, and you just do it yourself without even
Uh-huh.
trying.
And you do it for doing stuff for, I tell people that all the time. It's not I mean that is to me that's kind of the most extreme form of ableism, is doing things for other people out of kindness, because it's
Yes.
like, oh well, I just thought I'd do it for you. Well, I don't want you to do it for you. And so I'll share with you a little history. I have an aunt that I grew up with who was in a wheelchair her life, most of her life,
Yes.
and that from a very young age, that really just drilled into me how to interact and how to be around somebody who is disabled. My
Mm.
aunt would scold somebody if they pushed her wheelchair without her asking, or
Mm.
if they did something for her. She was very vocal about that, and so that instilled in me this strong sense that you don't do things for people unless they're number one in danger.
Yes.
That if it's a safety issue, then yes, don't do something for me. But if I'm about to hit something, please stop me. You know,
Yes.
um, but if I don't ask for help, I'm an adult. I It's my responsibility to seek out help if I need it, not to have somebody else do it for me, even if they're doing it out of kindness, because they don't understand what that does to somebody's psyche when there's already
Exactly.
so much you can't do, and then you have other things that you can do taken away from you. That
Right.
is so damaging. And that's
It
why I say
is.
it's the worst kind of ableism, because it's done with good intent.
That's right. I completely agree. So well said. Thank goodness for your aunt. She's amazing in my eyes.
Yeah, she
Amazing.
was. She. A lot of my belief, it was very insightful, just in terms of how you treat people that are different. Like that. She was in a wheelchair, but she could drive, she could do more than I could do sometimes, because I can't drive. And so, but then I wanted to touch on something that, because we're talking about ableism, there was an article by somebody not too long ago that really didn't sit well with me, and the reason being is because it involved feelings, and
Mm-hmm.
it revolved around a group of friends telling somebody else that their feelings were ableist.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
I it really didn't sit well with me for a multitude of reasons, because feelings are feelings, and it's
Yes.
never appropriate to tell somebody else what they should feel. Ever.
Right.
Ever, 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 ever. And so to tell somebody that they're feeling a certain way is ableist, in my view, is wrong. You don't
Yeah.
ever tell somebody what they should feel or what they shouldn't feel.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is, because ableism is actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not feelings. Feelings is its own separate thing. And what really bothered me about this one particular article is it didn't make that distinction, and it kind of
Right.
gave the appearance that it's okay to let people tell you how to feel. And
Mm-hmm.
that's never okay. So I've read way too much Brene Brown, which is because basically in this article they're shaming their friend for feeling a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and it really didn't sit well with me, and so I thank you for bringing up ableism, because it is a touchy subject. The example that I just gave, it's not something that I think there's enough of a consensus about how to approach it.
It's not. And I think it's mainly because I believe there's so much when it comes to the conversation, even about disability versus using the terms disability versus different
Yeah,
ability,
yeah.
that there's so much language and so many words that
Hmm.
need some clarity in regards to definition
Yeah.
and context. And I don't know. I'm like, is there anyone who's doing that work? I know. I mean, I definitely, like, I feel like maybe there's something of a calling on me to do it just because I am infatuated with words and
Yeah.
language. And it is something that I have started, but I'm not in any sort of program, at least right now, no doctoral or degree program or anything. There are a couple of other, oh, they're not candidates anymore. There are a couple of people that I know who do a lot of research in our field, who maybe I could partner with them on this. But I just feel like if someone did the work, did the research, put the publication out there, then maybe that would help. Also, hopefully, I could do a TED talk on this like, down the line,
Just
and
hey, throwing
really,
it out there is good. Throwing it out there to the universe is
just
a good
trying to
thing.
put it out there, right?
Yeah, but
But I do believe someone needs to do that work.
I agree, because the thing about the issue that sometimes come up is, historically speaking, if it, a lot of the terms that are historically been used, what I'll agree, they were derogatory. Handicapped, for one.
Oh,
I view
someone
that
said
as
handicap this
derogatory.
week.
That's what it used to be. It was handicap spaces. No, disabled is, I think, accurate. It's the lack of the ability to do something,
Right.
which is accurate. However, I can see how some people feel that it can be demeaning, because it's saying, well, you're not capable. But it's I kind of, I don't know how I feel about that. It's not saying someone's not capable. It's just saying that they lack a certain ability. But at the same time, putting things I prefer differently abled is the term that I usually go with, because that is
Right.
you still have to do all the same stuff, just how you do it is different. And that, I think that
Right.
it's in I understand the people not liking the word dis, which is, but heck, it's in the name of my podcast though. But it's in a different sort of context though.
Yes. No, I totally feel you there. Especially in terms of differently. Like I prefer to use empowering words
Yeah,
towards myself and abilities and everyone. However, I also do understand that we're in a space where for lack of a greater understanding, it's just easier for people to understand disabled as
yeah,
opposed to anything else at this point.
yeah.
Someone did, I cannot remember where I was. I almost passed out because I heard somebody say handicapped. And I was like, are you serious right now? But at the same time, I have to remind myself, I'm like, I don't know if there's been enough said and done where people even realize we're not saying that anymore. Just
Yeah,
like we're not like we have to emphasize we're not saying the R word.
yeah,
We're not, we're there's so many words that we should not be saying anymore because they are derogatory, they do hurt. Um,
Words matter.
and I'm sorry, say that again.
But words matter.
Yes, they
And they have
do.
power. Words can have power. So
They do. But anyway, I'm sorry. That's a whole other soapbox.
well, but it's also something that is worthy of discussion. I think people like to they don't like to, and in a general sense, because they're sensitive issues, and there's a lot of feelings around words and how they're used and how they're given. I always go back to context and
Yeah.
intent. That's what
Yeah.
I always fall back to. Was it meant to hurt? Was it meant to
Right.
cause harm? Is this person just ignorant? How was it said? What was the inflection? What was the
Right.
I think all of that matters. And I think it's so important to look at it from that picture, especially because we have an opportunity, as people that are, we're a lot of things, but part of that being differently abled, it's an opportunity to educate somebody maybe that is just they don't know. And if
Always.
we come in with a chip in
Always.
our shoulder, that doesn't help our cause.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's important to even when it's not somebody else's problem, the fact that I have vision loss, it's mine. And to take it out on other people, for one, is never appropriate.
Ooh, okay. See, can like we'd have to do a part two because because I feel like it is a completely other beast of a conversation to talk about our attitudes
Yeah,
as those with disabilities or different abilities, and how we have these conversations, how we attack those opportunities to educate, how we show up in those moments.
yeah,
Like it's so huge, and I feel like we have more people, even though I understand it, I can break it down for anyone as well, why someone totally popped off because yeah, you moved their cane for them. Let me, I could totally break down why that's very frustrating. Or, just the fact that you did, as a person who is completely able-bodied, and you use the word handicap, like why that's frustrating and why the person responded. But at the same time, like we have a huge responsibility, I personally believe, in how we show up in those moments, because they're I don't know. I feel like this for every other social categorization of my life as well.
yeah,
I don't know how or when people are going to ever experience someone that looks like me,
yeah,
and in a similar space. And I want people to leave me feeling better, possibly more educated, maybe we'll see, depending on the way the conversation gets to go, but definitely feeling better. I don't want people leaving me feeling like, and then taking it out on everybody else
yeah.
who may look like me or what I represent. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Absolutely. And and what you're talking about something you and I've talked about before, which is intersectionality. We're lots of things. We're not just somebody who's living with a disability. You're a mother. You're a whole lot of things. And it's something that is critically important to remember. It's because I'm not a fan of labels. I'm just me. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's an individual. They're themselves. I don't like labeling people and sticking people in boxes because
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever appropriate. And that's something when it comes to disability can be tough because
Yes.
there's a show. It was on Netflix. Oh gosh, what was it? It was I can't remember what it was called. Um, but it was a uh, a gay man who had cerebral palsy. Oh, it was called Special. That was what it was called. It was called Special, and he wrote it, and it hit home about like really, really, really hard uh, about how living with a disability affects everything in your life, and
Yes.
it really goes in full on with the intersectionality of life. And sure, disability is one thing, but it's not everything. And neither is the fact neither is being he's gay, and there's all these other things. He's also a writer.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these things that go into play,
Mm-hmm.
and they all connect. But
Yeah.
if we don't look at a whole person, that's going back to how living authentically, being showing up as your true self is the best way, I think, of really gaining access and getting into more places. Because if we show up as a whole person, as who we are, we're not hiding anything.
Right.
And it's human nature to not trust something. When we pick up on those signals, if it's that person's hiding something, there's a reason to distrust them. If we show up authentically, we're pretty freaking awesome.
Yes. Absolutely. And unique and gorgeous. Like, yes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I say it all the time. Disability can be your superpower as well.
Yep.
I can do more things than if the power goes out, I'm good. People that
Yeah.
if it's not, I can get around just fine. I'm not worried about it. I can cook, I can still clean, I can still read, I can still do all my stuff without any light on.
Right.
And I'm a lot faster on a computer than most people. Why? Because I have to be.
Yes.
We have, when we lean into those things and we lean into the advantages that we do have, uh, as somebody who's a career and executive coach, lean into your strengths. I tell that to anybody.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, so yeah, we could definitely do a part two on this one because you touched. I would love to have some conversations about some of that stuff, but we're just about out of time.
Oh,
And so I definitely would need to have you back on. That is for sure. That is for sure. Because I could talk to you for hours.
yes,
Um,
I know.
and
Okay.
so where can people find out more about you and what you do and the work that you do if they want to learn more about you, Montreece?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. So I am on diversitycrew.com. I think it's diversitycrew.com/Montreece, and you can find out more information about me there and the disability inclusion work that I do. I am also, I mean, I'm a full time executive assistant, but in terms of my writing can be found on Medium. Ironically do not have the URL, but I can send that over to you if that
Yeah, and
might help.
I'll put it in the description below if you send it over. That
Yes.
people can just if they want to find out more about you and the work you do that I think is critically important, and the organization that
Absolutely.
they do some awesome stuff. And
Yes, for sure. And I'll also send over my LinkedIn as well. Please reach out to me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn advocate.
yep, you are. I know you are because I see you on there all the time. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming on and having this I think an important conversation about uh, things that don't get enough attention in the realm of disability. Montreece Hardy, thank you so much for coming on and being my guest today.
Thank you so much, Ken. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Dissing Liability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, certified professional coach and owner of Vitality Career Coaching. You can find me at vitalitycareercoaching.com. And please remember to subscribe, like, and share the podcast with anyone and everyone you know. And finally, remember to be kind to others and to yourself. Thanks for tuning in.